Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to From Silos to Synergy, where I'll be diving into how to build successful product and lifecycle partnerships. My name's Phil. I'm the manager of lifecycle email at G2. And just a little bit about me. So people from the UK might be able to tell from my accent, from Liverpool in the UK. I've been working in digital marketing for coming up to 10 years now. First got started in digital marketing professionally by working in an agency. I had an array of B2B and B2C clients of all different types of business sizes. And actually started off building websites. I was a front-end developer, but I quickly became the email guy at the agency. And I think, like a lot of people who get an email, it comes through a need within an agency or a company or something like that. And that's exactly how I got started, but very, very quickly fell in love with it. I actually began to work with clients on email strategies. And I didn't know it then, but I was kind of acting as their lifecycle marketer of sorts. And this was in 2015, 2016, when lifecycle marketing was becoming more popular as subscription-based companies started to prioritize retention over engagement, and engagement over pure acquisition. And I found that in order to build effective email communications outside of standard comms like transactional emails, abandoned cart, welcome emails, I kind of had to dive into their customer data and figure out what motivates them, what their pain points and obstacles were, and where the friction points were and drop-off points, those key moments in the customer journey, and then work out how email could support them. And this often meant speaking to their product teams. So very early on in my career, there was this realization that to work effectively, I had to break down silos between teams and functions to work more cohesively. Because doing so can help with a myriad of things. Example here is data sharing between teams. Data sharing can improve the formatting, the depth, the accessibility of any data set. And this enables multiple teams to create more personalized, seamless experiences for customers through initiatives and communications. And, I've been working at G2 now for coming up to 4 years. And throughout those 4 years, my team and I have been working to build good working relationships with our buyer-facing product teams. But it's not always easy. We're just one of many stakeholders, so it can be difficult to be heard and considered. And sometimes, to be honest, there can be some pushback. So it can definitely seem like an uphill battle. But today I'm going to share some of the things that have allowed me to make progress with product teams over the years. So I'll start by defining lifecycle and lifecycle team areas of responsibility. I'll touch on why it's super important for product and lifecycle teams to intersect successfully. I'll share some of the primary issues that I've found can cause friction and pain points between teams. And then finally, I'll share the things that I've found have helped me break down those silos between lifecycle and product teams. But it's difficult. One of the challenges of doing this presentation, putting it all together, is that no two organizations are structured exactly the same. And so the roles and responsibilities of product and lifecycle teams will differ. But there's common ground and the similarities are kind of woven into the thread of product and lifecycle fundamentals that circumvent the differences in responsibilities and organizational structure. And so, today I hope to present something here that you can go away with and implement into your own situations. And even if it means just like opening the door to a better and more synergistic way of working with product, just a tiny little bit, I'm going to take that as a win. Okay, so let's first define lifecycle marketing. Well, Customer I/O defines it as the strategic process of connecting with customers at different stages of the customer journey. It's a marketing approach built on personalization. And, although lifecycle marketing is evolving over time, fundamentally, I agree with this definition. Lifecycle marketing is about tailoring messages based on the current stage of the customer to meet the needs they have and move them on to the next stage. And the idea is that each stage of lifecycle marketing requires a different message in order to keep the customer engaged. It's very rare to reel in customers at the first encounter with any brand nowadays. Winning people over, it takes time and thoughtful touch points and a ton of trust. And this is what makes lifecycle marketing so crucial in the modern age. And so, in the most basic sense, the lifecycle marketing team is responsible for shaping the customer journey, defining key milestones, addressing obstacles and pain points, and implementing initiatives to drive deeper customer engagement to boost revenue and retention. But why is it so important for lifecycle and product to work together synergistically? Well, simply put, the success of both teams is mutually dependent on each other. There's a real need for lifecycle to work closely with product and vice versa. And, that's because product and lifecycle, they have a big overlap throughout the customer journey, with each team kind of owning their own areas that can be used to support the other team. Some of which I've depicted here. But if you're a lifecycle marketer in this room, you may think that this sounds just like your roles and responsibilities, and it might not. And again, this has been like one of the challenges I faced when putting this together, in that lifecycle teams own and are responsible for different things in the user journey, depending on who you talk to. It differs from company to company, depending on things like maturity of the business, maturity of the product, business goals, the industry or segment in which the business plays. And, a lot of it actually largely depends on whether your company is typically sales driven, marketing driven, or product driven. And if you're not sure which one your company is, and I'm going to borrow this from a message that the great Justin Jordan sent to me in the Email Geek Slack group, just think about what team grew the fastest or was invested in first, because that is probably your answer. But regardless, it's by identifying the similarities between the two teams that we're able to start the process of creating synergy. It's the acknowledgement that product and lifecycle success is mutually exclusive in many ways, and that working together can be mutually beneficial. That is the first big step, because without a synergistic working relationship, we get friction and pain points internally, and this can cause issues for your users or your customers, and it can make life harder for folks in both teams. And to showcase this, I'm just going to pull up a few comments from the lives of lifecycle marketers who maybe don't necessarily work as synergistically with the product teams as possibly they'd like. And these pain points are ones that lifecycle marketers have posted or mentioned in the lifecycle email channel in the Email Geeks Slack group. So emails are great, but without product support and lifecycle goals, you're not going to get anywhere. Oftentimes, product will roll out a last-minute change to a big launch, or at least forget to share with lifecycle marketing until the last minute, something that impacts a lifecycle associated email. So lifecycle then has to scramble to update it in time because the email ends up as an afterthought. There's also the flip side, where people think, oh, we'll just send them an email. And that sending of emails is a big ask because the product side isn't set up properly. The trigger isn't being captured, or the data is being siloed. And these are just like 3 specific cases that have been publicly mentioned. I know there are a lot more, but they all point to a codependent relationship between product and lifecycle, where their successes are mutually dependent on each other. And this is because product teams tend to build features and workflows and user experiences. But without lifecycle marketing, customers may not know how to use them or maximize their value, and they might not get the traffic volume they're expecting. And lifecycle teams engage and educate customers through messaging, but they need products, data, and triggers and valuable features to make their messaging relevant, personalized, and valuable. And so in my experience, I found that the same set of three primary issues make it difficult for product and lifecycle teams to work together successfully. And they're the lack of clear ownership of tasks and areas of the customer journey, a lack of or breakdown in communication and structured workflows caused by working in silos, and misaligned goals and metrics. And these all have knock-on effects on accountability, data sharing, coordination, areas of responsibility, and conflicting priorities. And of course, there can always be resistance to change and collaboration due to like cultural or historical barriers that can cause friction. But to build a more collaborative relationship between product and lifecycle, we want to directly address to work and patch up the primary issues that cause these problems. And so instead of this situation, we have a situation where we have clear ownership and structured processes across all elements of the customer journey, an open feedback loop between product and lifecycle, and total alignment across both teams. Because without these key pillars, it makes things really difficult to create a seamless and engaging customer experience where the in-platform, in-app, on-site experience with the product itself is promoted well. And it's also fully supported by well-timed and effective communications, and where customers are educated to such an extent that they're confident enough to know that the product is going to solve the problem that they came to you with. After all, is it really possible to effectively build a seamless omni-channel user experience if the teams working to make that happen are also not working seamlessly? And I guess you could argue that, well, maybe it's possible, but certainly it'll come with great difficulty. So with that in mind, let's move into some of the ways that I found have helped me work with product teams more as a strategic partner than separate functions. So firstly, we need to establish clear roles and responsibilities across both teams. And this is a really good starting point, particularly if you have a product team that's maybe not super open or willing to put the work into building a cohesive relationship. And that's because at this point, we're not actually looking for buy-in. Instead, we're just kind of establishing where the boundaries are and why the boundaries are set where they are, so that everything is clearly defined. And I think it's important for each team to know and understand why each team owns what they own. And it's good to have an open conversation about it in case there are instances where product maybe owns something that lifecycle should own, or vice versa. And a good example of this is like transactional emails. There are good arguments for why both product and lifecycle should own them. Maybe the argument for lifecycle is that generally lifecycle marketers or lifecycle teams generally have more of an email mindset. So they're more suited to owning transactional emails from a technical and a monitoring perspective. And also having lifecycle kind of own and have like full visibility over the full email ecosystem can help create a more cohesive experience for your customers. But an argument for product ownership over transactional emails could be that by their very nature, they're triggered by product actions. And so products should have control over when and where the email responses are required within any given product. And product teams often also take the technical ownership over things like APIs and custom events that trigger the transactional emails. And so there's an argument that it kind of makes sense for the whole process to be under the control of a single team. Personally, I'm all for transactional emails being under lifecycle control for the reasons I stated above, and this is how we do things at G2. But I still recognize that we need product support for engineering and for them to kind of inform us when they might be working on a new project or initiative that could have downstream effects on existing transactional emails or create the need for net new ones. So there's still an element of cross-functional work there, and that's exactly why there's a need for this step. It's so that each team knows where their responsibilities start and end. And this doesn't just include like the initial setup of a workflow or a communication, but also the ongoing management and maintenance of it. Early on in my time at G2, before we established clear ownership boundaries, I'd set up a transactional email on behalf of product. And then both teams assumed that the technical documentation and ongoing maintenance of that email lay with the other team. And so if or when something like an API failed to trigger, it was really unclear who should have taken responsibility. So having clearly defined roles can really help foster mutual respect. And it's a step forward in preventing the overstepping of boundaries. And this really helps to strengthen collaboration and trust. And of course, areas of ambiguity are bad for business. They can cause lack of accountability, duplicated efforts that lead to like wasted bandwidth, slower decision making, difficulty scaling, and ultimately they can cause a poor customer experience. So this is like a super important first step. And it's one that I really can't imagine product being able to push back on too much. And so if you're looking to kick things off, I'd encourage you to schedule an initial sync with your product leadership team to discuss the ownership of key areas, kind of map it all out, make it all official, get it documented, and then flag any gray areas for further discussion. Okay, so now hopefully you know who owns what and why, and some boundaries have been established. So let's use this information now to define how both teams should work together to be the most effective that they can be. And we'll do that with a ways of working proposal. So a ways of working proposal, it establishes guidelines for when and how product teams should notify and involve lifecycle in a new project or initiative, and vice versa. And this goes beyond just the roles and responsibilities I mentioned in the first step. This document, it helps to create a more cohesive way of working in a few ways. So firstly, it encourages efficient collaboration. And it's through things like providing structured processes for things like requesting email support or requesting product engineering support. And establishing a timeline for common tasks to prevent last-minute changes that could delay launches. So this could be for things like timelines for building a net new email or an API. And it includes things like the best way to communicate with each team. One team might use Jira, another might prefer Slack or Asana or Confluence. So it's just making sure that each team is clear in what the best way to communicate with the other is. Also, it helps to provide clear communication and alignment by defining how and when each team should involve each other in projects. It reduces misunderstandings by ensuring both teams are on the same page from the start. And it helps each team understand the operational constraints of the other. It can also prevent operational bottlenecks by outlining the standard information required for email requests and avoiding unnecessary back and forth. And ensuring that the bandwidth of each team is factored into the other team's project timelines. And finally, it encourages cross-team accountability. So it kind of like reinforces the defined roles and responsibilities from step one for both teams. And it provides transparency in decision making, which can help make sure that no team is overburdened. And the idea is kind of to create a structured framework to ensure efficient, compliant, and strategic integration of lifecycle owned communications within product initiatives and product owned areas within lifecycle initiatives. And it should touch on the points shown in this slide here, just to emphasize collaboration and planning and execution to maximize support for business objectives, all while ensuring that each team has the adequate time and information to complete their work in sync with one another. And lifecycle crew, hopefully this is an easy sell for your product team because it's super beneficial for them as it is for you. It's like the beginning of synergy, right? And if you think this would be beneficial, I've linked to a template here that I've built just to get you started with drafting your own proposal. So go ahead and download that and build that out. I've found that it's easy to start with what your teams actually have in common. So like mutual communication channels or shared documentation software, and then kind of build it out from there. And once you've got something together, share it with product, ask them for feedback, let them know that you'd find it helpful to have a similar document with information written from their point of view as well. Okay. Number 3, document roadmap items and tag stakeholders. So I'm big on sharing roadmaps and PRDs and project briefs and tagging anyone that I think might be affected by the work included in the documentation, or even might just be interested in it. As I'm sure that all lifecycle marketers in this room know, there are often downstream effects to product initiatives. Data pipelines get enriched or broken, triggered emails can stop being triggered, and customer behavior can change, which can require a shift or an adaptation in email comms. And this goes both ways, like lifecycle can implement a communication of some sort, like to the onboarding journey, for example, that can drive behavioral changes that require product to adapt. And to give you an example of something that happened recently at G2, one of our product teams was due to start working on an initiative to implement LinkedIn Verify, just to help speed up review moderation. But to verify, they first needed users to connect their LinkedIn account and use that to log into G2. Well, it just so happened that my team, User Lifecycle, we were also working on a LinkedIn initiative to increase the amount of users that actually connected their LinkedIn to G2 for easy login and enhanced personalization. And because of roadmap sharing, we were both able to identify that and support each other. And we actually found ways to improve adoption for both, as LinkedIn Verify could actually act as a LinkedIn login and vice versa, albeit with a few back-end tweaks. But giving each other visibility into what you'll be working on and tagging stakeholders in so they can choose to follow the progress of a project is incredibly powerful, and it can really help optimize the work that both teams do. And as lifecycle marketers, it gives us a chance to figure out what product's focus is and then bring examples to the table of how we can help them accomplish their goals so that their wins are your wins and vice versa. So your action point: find or request access to your product team's roadmap or project tracking doc. Add yourself and other key stakeholders as watchers and anything that you might feel may impact your work. And if you want to go one step further, set up a regular roadmap sync between your teams. This will give you an opportunity to identify any collaboration opportunities. Okay. So we've established that lifecycle and product have a big overlap in areas of the customer journey. We've established which teams are responsible for various areas of that journey. We've hopefully agreed on the best way to work together successfully. And fingers crossed, now there's some transparency in upcoming roadmap items and projects and initiatives. Great. Now I've found that it can be really helpful to use that information to try and find goals and opportunities that are mutually beneficial. And if there aren't any shared goals organically, you can create some, which can further help with alignment. You can even try sharing some metrics too. So you can share some goals like, improving the amount of customers that experience setup, aha, habit moments, improving activation and onboarding completion rates, driving upsells and cross sells, deepening your engagement with your product. You can share some metrics like your retention metrics, or like daily, weekly, monthly active users, setup, aha, habit moment metrics, adoption rate of a certain feature, activation rate. There are a lot of opportunities to find mutually beneficial goals and metrics. And I found that when lifecycle and product teams share goals and metrics, it encourages some of the good habits that I've been talking about. So like the leveraging of shared data, joint A/B testing and experimentation, and a defined cadence of collaboration. And this is because the shared tracking of crucial customer behavior and milestones, it realizes the positive effects of collaboration efforts. And it serves as both a reminder to collaborate and a North Star for both teams to work towards. So again, putting this into action in your next product sync, ask them what their top KPIs are this quarter or next quarter. See if there are any opportunities for lifecycle to help. And then try to identify a shared goal and set up a joint experiment to drive goal-oriented results. And finally, I'd encourage you to communicate and meet often. Really encourage open dialogue between your two teams. Having and maintaining an open dialogue with product, it's super important because it really helps ensure cross-team alignment and efficiency, both of which are key to creating a seamless user experience. And communication, it can take on many forms. Some things that have helped me in the past are like creating a Slack group to share project or initiative milestones. And this can be something that can be set up to run automatically or via like a webhook from Jira or Confluence or some other project or task management software. You can also set up a monthly cross-team sync to share insights from recent campaigns or A/B tests. And this can really help each team know what types of things are resonating with your audience. And this can help boost activation, retention rates, and really deepen engagement with your product. Things like audience segments or messaging or visuals, whatever's working or not working. But however you decide is best to communicate, it's really important to do so regularly. By establishing things like feedback loops between your teams to discuss progress and blockers for new and current projects and initiatives, campaign and experiment insights, and raise any positive or negative downstream effects of another team's work. Because they'll really help resolve issues quickly and avoid falling back into working into silos and duplicating efforts. And it'll encourage knowledge sharing that can boost business outcomes for both teams. So one last time, let's put this into action. I encourage you to create a Slack channel or a Notion page or something similar for cross-team collaboration, and use that channel. Share insights and test results, ask quick questions, and highlight any upcoming changes that may impact the other team. And scheduling a weekly, twice monthly, or monthly sync can also help as well. So breaking down silos and working together more successfully, it's about making life easier for both teams. Improved communication, enriched, shared data, consideration for the needs and requirements of both teams, clear roles and responsibilities, streamlined workflows, and shared goals. They all work to ensure that there's mutual support for each team. And it all works to optimize internal processes and improve the customer experience. So I hope I've shared some things in this session that can help you out, or at least have sparked an idea about how you can work more effectively with your product teams. And I'd love to keep in touch. I've added my LinkedIn details to the slide here. You can also find them on the Unpacked website. So definitely reach out if you want or need to. And thanks again for listening.